Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa McAllister, and you're listening to The Melissa Made Show. Now, for decades, I've dedicated myself to helping women break the cycle of dieting, navigate through all the fads, and change their lives through my nutrition coaching. Now, each week, I'm going to talk about everything from deep nutrition, mindset, self-care, the ideal workout routine, tips on how and why to implement intermittent fasting in your life, my favorite recipes that are not only crowd pleasers, but they're actually healthy for you, and so much more. Now, with small and consistent changes, you can defy aging while living a happier, healthier, and more heart-filled life. I'm so excited to show you it's possible with the right strategies that are so simple to adopt. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Melissa Made Show. So if you were watching my stories when I was recording this episode, I talked a little bit about, it's almost a love-hate relationships with this podcast. I love I hate doing the solo podcast. You guys know that. I just hate talking to myself, but I love when I have a guest. And I learned so much from my guests. And especially today, I almost feel like I should be paying her because with all the clients that I work with, what she specializes in is something that I'm always wanting to learn more about. So I'm going to give her a great introduction, but I mentioned in my stories that I might read this. And I'm going to go ahead and read it because I got this message today on my Instagram and I just thought it was perfect timing. So when you guys send me messages, they really mean a lot to me. And so I got this quick message. I won't say her name because I didn't get a permission to share it, but it says, I wanted to say this. Thank you so much for the work that you do and the guest speakers you have on your podcast. It has been my source of learning during my walks. In fact, I was not fond of walking until I found your podcast, and now I can't wait to go on a walk. That's my me time. I am a physician assistant by profession, and I practice neurology and sleep medicine. And I have learned so much from your teachings and the discussions with your guest speakers that I use it daily with my patients. Just wanted to say this as a note of thank you. So when I get these kind of messages, it definitely excites me to do this. And then, like I said, the guest that I have today, I really truly think that she's going to resonate with a lot of you on a very deep level. And I just have so much to say. I almost feel like, as sad as it is, and she'll agree with me. It almost seems controversial these days. And it just blows my mind that it is controversial because of the noise that is on social media when it comes to having a healthy relationship with food. But let me give the doctor an introduction first, and then we're going to dive into it. So again, welcome to the Melissa May Show, where we explore the fascinating world of health, wellness, and personal development. So in today's episode, we're diving into the groundbreaking work of Dr. Susan Peirce Thompson and her company, Bright Line Eating. So Dr. Susan Peirce Thompson, which is a very long name, is a renowned expert in the fields of psychology, neuroscience, and nutrition, and her revolutionary approach to weight loss and food freedom has transformed the lives of countless individuals around the world. Now, her approach to weight loss and eating has been seen widespread and has given sustainable success. She's been twice covered in the Journal of Nutrition and Weight Loss. She has been featured on Today, The Doctors, and the School of Greatness with Lewis Howes, which I bet was great. And so let's uncover the science behind Bright Line Eating and how it's empowering people to take control of their eating habits and live their healthiest and happiest lives. So it's quite the honor, Dr. Susan, to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Melissa. It's great to be here.
You're welcome. So I was telling her before we started this that so many times, I'm not conventional medicine. We're looking for root causes and how to help people find why they're not feeling well. So let's dig into why you can't sleep, or why you've got chronic acne, or why you've got, bloating in your abdomen. Let's figure that out. And I'm pretty darn good at it. But one of the things that I always run into with my clients is number one, of course, and one of your beautiful blogs on your Instagram I listened to talked about motivating and how you're not in the convincing business. And I do love that somebody needs to want this for this to work for them. But the importance of just downright not being able to stick with something because there is that quote unquote addiction to food. And again, you guys, you're going to hear me reference, I've spent all day on her Instagram. I told her this. I feel like she's my best friend now. You talk about the 12-step program and Alcoholics Anonymous in the book. And I want to open this up because people that are listening to this maybe are just instantly assuming, yes, I'm addicted to food, or can you really get addicted to food? Or is there such a thing? Or is it just, that you have cravings? Can we start off by talking about people's relationship with food and how sometimes it can be pretty dark and a really, really, truly hard thing for someone to overcome, to be able to have that food freedom, to have that good relationship with food, especially during the holidays, and just be able to, as you so eloquently put, that food isn't like, it is a joy. It is a source of happiness, but it is not the most important thing in your life. It shouldn't be the thing that brings you the most joy. It shouldn't be the thing that's on your mind 24/7. And if it is, how we overcome that. So that was a lot to unpack, but can we start there with the whole concept of food addiction? Because I do know, which I will reference a lot because that's where most people get their information in the world of social media. Some people will say, absolutely, food is addictive. And other people will say, no, it's not. It's not. You can't really get addicted to food. Can you share your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great place to start. And I think I want to say, first and foremost, I am working tirelessly and I look to a future where people won't say, quote unquote, food addiction. It'll be just known that without doubt, food can be addictive. And that doesn't mean that it's addictive for all people, right? Plenty of people drink alcohol
Mhm.
successfully, moderately, but alcoholism is a thing.
Yeah.
And food addiction is not controversial in the academic hallways of people who are in addiction medicine studying addiction in the brain. Neuroscientists who study addiction in the brain aren't ever saying, well, food addiction is controversial. They'll say, oh no, come into my office. Let me pull up some brain scans. Let me show you right here. So they'll circle it on the PET scan or the fMRI scan. And they'll say, see this area right here? This is the mesolimbic reward pathway. This is the nucleus accumbens. This is the ventral tegmental area. Do you see how there's very little activation here? This is the brain of someone who's gotten addicted to ultra processed foods. Do you see how it looks just like the brain of this person over here who's addicted to heroin? And
Mm.
just like the brain of this person over here who's addicted to cocaine? And just like the brain of this person here who's addicted to alcohol? It's exactly the same disease. It's the same condition in the brain. So it's not controversial from a brain science perspective. It's dopamine downregulation in the nucleus accumbens. It's also serotonin and endocannabinoid downregulation. It's also blunted impulse control. So prefrontal cortex doesn't come online to rein in impulses the way that it should. It's also memory and cognitive deficits that go along with addiction. It's a whole host of brain things. Oh, and also heightened cue rewarding. So the cues that predict your rewards, the Starbucks logo, the McDonald's logo, the time of day when you tend to get, finish putting the kids to bed and sit on the couch eating chips and ice cream or whatever, right? Those cues light up your brain more than they would the brain of someone who's not addicted. And if you try abstinence for a bit, let's say you try abstaining from processed foods for a bit, well, that cue reward response is going to be even higher during that initial period of abstinence. And that's exactly what it looks like when you take a cocaine addict and you take them off their cocaine for a bit. The cue is like, here's $100 in your pocket, right? Now, all of a sudden, their brain is lighting up even more, saying, go buy drugs, go buy drugs, go buy drugs. So it's not controversial from that perspective. I want to just say why it's become controversial. Because in the 1970s, when anorexia and bulimia were first identified, we didn't know anything about addiction in the brain back then. And clinicians thought of treatment for eating disorders as, well, we need to take these people over here who come in with these eating disorders with lots of food rules. They limit their calories, they limit their meals. They've got all lists of bad foods that they don't eat. And we need to make them like normal eaters over here. They'll eat whatever, whenever, with a relaxed posture, everything in moderation, intuitive eating. There are no bad foods. And that way of eating became the standard for so-called normal eating. Now, fast forward 50 years, we've never updated those standards. And so the notion of food addiction or ultra-processed food addiction becomes threatening to all the people with degrees in nutrition and masters in social work and clinical psychologists and counseling psychologists, because they've been trained that restricting food eating times, food categories, or eliminating, I'm not going to say food groups, because let's be clear, sugar is not a food group, right? We all need to be clear on that. Sugar is not a food group, but eliminating foods from your diet, right? You have to eat, but you don't have to, you have to eat to live, but you don't have to eat donuts to live, right? So eliminating certain foods from your diet starts to smack to them of the kind of food rules that they associate with eating disorders. And that's where it all gets kerfuffled, right? And people get all bajiggity and they say, oh, no, food can't be addictive, because they know that the next thing coming is some form of abstinence from those foods. And yeah, that is where we need to go for some people. So yes, food is addictive. It's not controversial from a neuroscience perspective. It is still controversial from a clinical diagnostic perspective. It's not recognized in the DSM or the ICD yet, but I believe it will be over the next 10 years. And it's not all foods. It's ultra processed foods that are addictive. So that's my not so short-winded answer to your very good question.
I love that. And I, even me, who I feel like I have a very healthy relationship with food, far from perfect, but very healthy relationship with food, that I had an internal sigh of relief, because I'm like, you do feel like, I always talk about, I had a hiatus last year. Can't believe it's already been a year, where I went from November all the way till March, because I've been in the health and fitness industry for so long that I was just like, I'm going to drink what I want. I'm going to, just not be so strict with how I eat, and just kind of eat through the holidays. And that did not.
What happened?
Yes.
What happened?
It did not fare well. I had a very, very, very difficult time getting back to the lifestyle that I had created and loved so much. A very difficult time. Food was so loud in my head, and alcohol. I drank more alcohol in those 4 months than I did my whole life. And I didn't drink a lot, but I did. It was definitely more. And it was very, very, very difficult. I kept having to start over. I kept relapsing back because it was just comfortable there. And so I feel that. I feel what you said on such a deep level. And I know my followers have as well. And one of the things I found very interesting, which I wholeheartedly agree with, I will tell you with, but again, I feel comfort in that you agree with me. You had mentioned a lot, and you just mentioned here a second ago too, that not food groups, but there are some things that you have to pull back, and listening to you, you mentioned sugar and flour a lot. Can we talk a little bit about with Brightline, how pulling back on that sugar and flour really help people get control and ultimately have food freedom?
Yeah. Well, sugar and flour aren't really foods, right? They're made just like drugs. If you think about how heroin and cocaine are made, in their natural form, they're not even addictive. I mean, like literally not addictive. Cocaine comes from the coca leaf. And there's a published scientific paper saying that those hikers in the Andes Mountains who are plucking coca leaves off the bush and putting them in their cheek and chewing them, they're not addicted and they're not getting high. But when you take the inner essence of that coca leaf and you refine and purify it into that fine white powder, you've now created a very powerful drug. And it's the same with heroin, right? People as teenagers sometimes laugh when they find out that if you eat too many poppy seed bagels, you'll fail a drug test, right?
Yeah.
Because there's opiates in those
Yeah.
poppies, right?
Yeah.
Heroin comes from the poppy plant, but
Mhm.
you're not getting high and you're not getting addicted off of poppy seed bagels. But if you take the inner essence of that poppy plant and you refine and purify it into either a fine, bright brown powder or a sludgy liquid, kind of not
Mhm.
too different than high fructose corn syrup, right? You've now taken that harmless plant and you've created a drug. And that's what sugar and flour are fundamentally. And I'm talking sugar, whether it's high fructose corn syrup or table sugar, whatever. They're drugs and they hit the brain as drugs. They don't hit the brain as foods at all. And they release dopamine in floods that are not typical for anything that you could get in the normal food environment. And they set up cravings and they set up dopamine downregulation. The receptors go, okay, that was excessive. That was great, but we don't need anywhere near that much stimulation here in the future. So we'll be sure to thin out and depopulate and get less receptive so that the next time these floods seem to keep coming. So we'll prepare ourselves, we're on notice, and we'll now thin out and become less numerous, less responsive. And before you know it, you've got the brain of a cocaine addict. And all you've been doing is eating the standard American diet.
Right. So I talk about this a lot because I used to be very adamant about this. And I reposted my stories the other day, a gentleman who had lost a ton of weight. I think he did 75 hard, believe it or not, to do it. That was his choice on how he had lost well over 100 pounds. And what I found interesting about his reel that I reposted was he talked about abstinence. And he, when people say, you only live once and you should allow yourself cheat meals and stuff like that, he said that didn't work for me. He said I had to abstain from these foods that made it very difficult for me to stay on track. And so in all of my years, I used to be, because it works for me. Abstinence works for me. If I'm going into a party and I know there's just going to be a huge buffet of, I'm always so careful, Dr. Susan, when I say this, naughty foods, bad foods, because I get yelled at when I call foods bad, off-plan meals, that I do better just not having any of it than trying to have just a couple of bites. Cause then I obsess the whole party. Oh, I just loved how you talked about Thanksgiving and the ambience of the lighting and the fire and the company and the hugs that you were getting, that you're trying to, that's what you're focusing on, not the food, and I'm like, it's just so powerful. I agree with that. And so for me, when I go in, I'm thinking about enjoying the conversations with people and trying not to sit there and just constantly looking over at something that I had a bite of that was so good, I want another bite of. So what your take on abstinence versus moderation? Because again, what you're hearing on social media, and for these people that do have this addiction to food, they're being told left and right just to do things in moderation. And I know I believe the Bright Line probably has a very firm take on that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think it was someone in like the 1600s who said abstinence is as easy for me as temperance is difficult. And in Bright Line Eating, thanks to one of our Bright Lifers who came up with this, we have a great slogan, which is none is easier than some.
Oh,
None is easier than some. And the thing is, it's not true for everyone. So, I mean, God bless us with these. There are two kinds of people in the world sayings, but let me just give a stab at one. There are two kinds of people in this world. People for whom, eating a cookie scratches the itch, and people for whom eating a cookie makes the itch itchier. Right? When we scratch the itch, it sounds like you're one of the people. When you scratch the itch with food, it makes it itchier. It's not helpful.
yeah.
And especially since the first itch is very light, typically, just not indulging it is by far easier. The minute you indulge it, it starts to get itchier. And there are people, I just know this because I observe them, like they're creatures in the zoo, who at the end of this long dinner that we'll have together, and they're my friends. I mean, we laugh about this, but they'll order a dessert, share it among 6 people, and everyone will take one spoonful and then put down the spoon and go, oh, that hit the spot. And then they'll all agree, oh yeah, I wouldn't want another bite. Like that was perfect. just one taste of it to end a meal. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, the waiter hasn't carried away the bread basket yet, and there's still 3 rolls in there. Can I sneak those rolls somehow without anyone noticing? Like, they're all onto the chocolate cake, and I still am obsessing about those rolls. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
I would need about 6 of those pieces of chocolate cake, and I'd just be getting going, right? So, for me, it doesn't work. Now, I just need to say that this is not something that I've convinced myself because somehow it's like a mindset thing. I've run this experiment really sincerely. And even after like 8 years of abstinence, I went back, I hired one of the foremost experts in the world in intuitive eating and paid a lot of money and got a lot of training and did a lot of breathing and meditation work before each bite. And I would often find a stopping place and find that a bite or 2 would be sufficient, but just not often enough, right? Then later that day, I'd have another bite and couldn't stop for a while. And then, and suddenly I was gaining weight. And then I'm thinking, well, how many new wardrobes of clothes am I willing to buy in service of this experiment, right? And the answer is like, not that many, right? And then, and it just started to spiral out of control really quickly. My research has shown that there's a continuum from 1 to 10. I call it the food addiction susceptibility scale. And there's really good research on this in both human populations and rodent populations like rats, right? Where it comes out the same. Among large samples of the population, 1/3 of people are not addictable. And I'm going to say that again because everyone gets this wrong. 1/3 of people have brains that are not addictable at all. That means they're not addicted to anything. They've never had an addiction. They never will have an addiction. They're not addicted. They can have 1 cigarette at a concert and not think about a cigarette again for months or years. They can drink coffee every morning, but if suddenly they're somewhere where there's only decaf, their system doesn't notice or care. They don't get a headache. They're fine. They'll never become an alcoholic. Okay, that's 1/3 of the population. 1/3 of the population is moderately addictable, and 1/3 of the population is highly addictable. And us folks who are highly addictable, we have brains that wire faster to the cues that predict rewards. So we would have been great in the clan back in the day. We would have known which weather patterns are going to predict rain for our crops. We would have known which sound in the bush was going to predict a snake was there. So don't, pitch camp over here because I heard a sound near that bush. We would have been great to have around in terms of surviving because the cues that predict positive or negative rewards are a good thing to be attuned to. But in this society, we get pulled in by the sights, sounds, smells, times of day that predict food rewards, and we can't stop going toward them. And our brain hounds us incessantly for the next one after we've had one.
Yeah.
But it's not everybody, right? And so what I want to say is, if it sounds like crazy pants to you and you're someone who really does well scratching the itch with 1 bite of dessert after dinner, go with that. Do what gives you peace. We're not talking about you. And what we ask is that you respect and understand that other people's brains are wired differently, and it actually doesn't work for them to have the 1 bite of something. And just understand that hounding us or mocking us when we say no thank you to pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving, it's not helpful, right? Just like I'm almost 30 years sober now, I hope you wouldn't mock me when I say no thank you to the champagne on New Year's Eve. You'd help me find some sparkling water for the toast, right? And in that same vein, there are those among us who just do better not eating this stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that was so powerful. Probably one of the most powerful statements I've heard on my podcast so far. And we just put out our 100th episode. So very powerful. Thank you for that. One thing we all need to be taking care of is our gut. Now, it impacts literally everything: your weight, your mood, your skin, your digestion. And because your gut houses up to 80% of your immune system, a healthy gut is truly the gateway to feeling your best. Unfortunately, our bodies are being attacked every single day and wreaking havoc on our gut health, stress, toxins, and even just one day of eating a Western style diet. Now, thankfully, with Just Thrive Probiotic, it's now easier than ever to give your gut what it needs to thrive. Just Thrive's breakthrough award-winning probiotic is the only product on the market that's proven to turn your gut into an antioxidant factory. Do you hear that? Yes, this probiotic actually produces antioxidants right in the gut, meaning you get maximum immune, digestive, and total body health support. Wow. It's vegan friendly, gluten free, dairy free, histamine free, and non GMO. And the best part, you can open the capsule and sprinkle it onto any food or drink. It's the perfect recipe companion to keep your whole family healthy. Now, Just Thrive has been loudly endorsed by some of the biggest health luminaries on the planet, including me. And you can learn more by listening to the podcast that I did with Tina Anderson just a little while ago. This company is changing the game in the supplement industry. No fake marketing, no claims, just real, scientifically proven results. You know, that's important to me. So if you're looking for the best in gut health and immune support, choose the clinically proven, award-winning power of Just Thrive Probiotic. And guess what? You can save 15% off site-wide when you go to justthrivehealth.com and use the promo code Melissa Maid at checkout. 3 things. The first one is Dr. Susan and I were talking about animals beforehand, and I just have to say, over your, is it your right shoulder? Maybe I see your little kitties running back and forth. Do you have one cat or more than one?
2. I got 2 little Bengal cats. Yeah, they're so cute.
They're adorable.
Alabaster and Cincinnati. Yeah.
Oh, great names. Great names. Huge cat lover. And the second one is, by chance, have you, or my listeners, have you watched the series on Apple Plus called Physical?
I have not.
Okay. So my husband is out of town, and I'm not a big TV watcher, but he's out of town for the week. I miss him very much. And so I had time in the evening, and I started watching this. It's from the 80s, and she was a housewife, and she got into aerobics, and she has a binge purge disorder. And it was just fascinating, the monologue that would go in her head and what would spiral her into this, and how she would use exercise as a release. You know, not necessarily, I wouldn't, she might have been orthorexic. You might find that show really interesting with the work that you do. But watching that was just, there's so many times that I actually would see myself and her, never been where she was, but I could understand the negative self-talk that would happen. And when I listened to your last blog, and you were talking about Thanksgiving dinner, and I really found this helpful for me, and I would love for you to share how you talked about not necessarily not changing the rules when it comes to if something is coming up. Because I remember back in the day, before I knew better, I would eat all day before Thanksgiving, or if I knew I was going out, I would, not eat before that dinner so I could make up for it during dinner and stuff like that. But the idea of not changing, your rules to keep you on track and feeling your best for anything, but especially for Thanksgiving. And now that we're filming this to where Christmas is coming up, and like you said, New Year's is coming up, and I'm just very interested in you sharing that with the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the point is that in Bright Line Eating, yes, we help people lose weight, and we've got incredible published weight loss results. I mean, on the order of pretty much exactly the same magnitude of results that Wegovy and Ozempic get, but without the drugs, right? We are just analyzing data now for our 6-year follow-up study.
Amazing.
And it's incredible. People are still maintaining enormous weight losses 6 years out. And now it's true that we're focused on weight loss as the primary outcome that we're marketing to people, like come to Bright Line Eating and lose your weight.
Yeah.
But really what we also are talking about in equal amounts is food freedom.
Yeah.
And what we mean by that is freedom from the chatter of in your head of will I, won't I, should I, shouldn't I, have I had too much or not enough? Maybe a little bit more now. How about if I have a little of this now, I can have a little more of this later, right? And that's what gets kicked up when you start to think about massaging, negotiating, swapping, moving around your food plan when an event is coming up. You got to keep track of, having less now to have more later. And it just kills your peace, right? And it also buys into this mistaken notion that it's the food that makes us okay, that things will be truly, genuinely, in some way that matters better if only we can just have a few more bites of really delicious food. And the reality is that delicious food is such a poor proxy for happiness, joy, connection, well-being,
Goosebumps.
flourishing, feeling good, right? Delicious food is great, don't get me wrong, but let's be real, right? If we're looking at it fairly and squarely, it's no more wonderful than a hot shower, right? And a hot shower is great. If I tried to live without them, I would be miserable. But I have my hot shower once a day, and I'm one of those people who takes an embarrassingly long hot shower because I really do love them.
Yeah.
But I'm never looking forward to them beforehand. I'm never wondering afterwards if I did it right, if it was too long or too short or not quite the right thing. I'm free. I have no chatter in my brain around it. And that's how food should be, right? I'm delighted every time it's time to sit down and eat. I love my food. And then when the dishes get rinsed and put in the dishwasher, I'm on with my life and I don't give it another thought. And the minute you start to think that your food is going to do more for you than that, then just fuel your tank and give you something enjoyable to do for half an hour in your day, you're looking for your satisfaction in life in the wrong place.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so powerful. And because of that, I assume there's strategies to help people get past that. And I believe in the Bright Line, which I'm going to dig into deeper, daily affirmations play a big role in that. And mental working, on your mental wellness, as opposed to just because we're talking about taking sugar and taking flour out of your diet, which is obviously over time, which you'd mentioned, will probably get worse before it gets better, but eventually the addiction to that actual substance will start to subside. But there's got to be brain work. There's got to be emotional work that goes along with that. Can you share a little bit what you do in that to help people during those really tough times when the mind is going for a minute?
Totally. So you just said two things, actually, mindset work and also emotional work. And I'm wondering, because I'm just aware that what I just said makes me sound like someone for whom this is easy. Can I just pause and give your listeners a second of background on where I come from with this stuff? Because I am not one of these people for whom this is easy.
Yeah.
Like, not at all. Okay, so here's just the shortest version the thumbnail version of my story. I started using drugs when I was 14, and it was just experimental at first. I was having fun with alcohol, pot, mushrooms, acid, ecstasy. And then I found crystal meth when I was 16. And that led to drug-induced psychosis and dropping out of high school when I was 17, which led to doing cocaine and then crack cocaine and prostitution. And by the age of 19, that's all I was. I was a high school dropout, I was a prostitute, and I was a crack addict. And then my 20th birthday came and went. I got struck clean and sober when I got taken to a 12-step meeting for drug and alcohol rehabilitation a few days after my 20th birthday. I haven't had a drink or a drug in 29 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you, God. Thank you, God. It's the biggest miracle of my life. And food came right into that vacuum. And suddenly I was struggling with chronic obesity. I couldn't stop eating addictively. I was trying every 12-step approach for food in the world that I could find. Nothing was working. And I finally put down addictive eating when I was 28. And I went from obese to slender. And I've been maintaining that weight loss now for over 20 years. But food was harder to kick than crack cocaine for me by a lot, like not by a little, by a lot. Food is way harder. And the neuroscience shows that that's not because it has a bigger effect in the brain. It's because the recovery environment is so much harder. When I quit smoking crack, I could go to and from work without really any cues triggering me to relapse. But think about the cues that trigger you to relapse with food everywhere, all the time, relentless social pressure, multi-billion-dollar food companies hammering you with commercials where they're putting food addicts in fMRI machines now to test out their commercials and how much they hit the pleasure centers of the brain and the snack food formulations and how addictive they are. There's no place, time, or occasion that you're free from the assault to break your food plan, essentially. So when I say mindset and emotional work, here's where that comes into play, because I'm not someone for whom food was a hot shower. I'm someone who was thinking about food and my weight 98% of my life. Like that was my life, was how do I deal with this food issue and this weight issue? I'm a mess until I deal with this. So the mindset piece is you've got to be tough against the food. Once you have, how do I put this? Once you have the gift of a healed or semi-healed brain, which is the state that I'm in now, which takes 2 months. In my research, we've published these studies. Hunger and cravings in my program go down to little or no hunger and cravings anymore ever at 2 months on average in the population. Not for 100% of the people, but on average, that's what happens. Right. So 2 months in, you're in a place where food thoughts will continue to land on your shoulder like dragonflies. Yeah. And the minute they land, if you don't shoo them off, they're starting to grow into dragons. And if you let them stay there, you fondle them a little, you examine them a little, you consider them, now they're growing into bigger dragons and plans are hatching, reservations are building, and suddenly you've got a 5-alarm fire on your hand. You've got a fire-breathing dragon on your shoulder. And so the mindset piece is to have mantras at the ready and action steps, like an emergency action plan, so that when the dragonfly lands, you're saying, that's not my food. That's poison to me. You're saying, none is easier than some. You're saying, just follow the friggin' plan just for today. You can eat tomorrow. Don't eat today. Whatever you're saying, right? Yeah. But you've got the mantra that works for you. And then the inner work is real. Yes, we were eating over stuff, and emotions are the number one cue to eat, but really they're just cues. Mm-hmm. And it takes some inner work to develop the internal peace to be able to live without addictive eating, without sugar and flour, one day at a time. And so the mode that they use in 12-step programs is the 12 steps. The mode that we use in Bright Line Eating, the modality, is internal family systems, IFS. So this is parts work. So we teach people about the indulger part, the food indulger part, that's saying, one bite won't hurt. We can get back on track on Monday. No one will know. I'm here by myself. I can have this, blah, blah. That's the food indulger part. It's got a seductive rationalizer way about it. And it's in battle with the food controller part. And that part of you is trying to batten up the hatches to stay on the food plan because it doesn't want to make it all, it'll just unravel so fast. And those parts are at war with each other. Then you've got a rebel part that really doesn't want to stick to a freaking food plan. You've got a caretaker part that's so busy doing for everyone else that you're not making time for self-care. You've got an isolator part that's keeping you away from support that you need. So we do work on the parts of us that are in play in our food journey. That's a whole thing. We could talk about that. But yeah, I've been talking for long enough. But I just wanted to say, this all isn't easy for me. Like, I come by this stuff really, really honestly. And in the last 20 years that I've been in my bright body, which is what we call a body that's had the bright transformation, that's, not carrying excess weight, not obsessed with food anymore. In those 20 years, I've experienced significant relapse, like periods of really intense relapse. My drug and alcohol addiction has been perfect. My food addiction has been a rocky road. And I sit here today free. Like, I am a free woman today. I'm not obsessed with my weight or my food at all. I am peaceful. But it's hard won, and it's no joke, food addiction.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Very much. That takes you to a whole new level. Dang it. I already liked you. Now I love you. I love that. Yeah. Talk about taking the trauma and turning it into not only helping yourself, but helping so many people. Says a lot about you. I feel like I have, so this is a personal question, because I feel like sometimes, and I loved how you said that, and I mentioned it in the beginning, how you're not in the business of, convincing people. And I love the story that you told about the woman that sold her wedding ring to do the program. How does somebody know? How does can you shed light on that? I don't even know if you can, but how do you, because I do have a lot of people that will come and invest in the testing for, a gut protocol, or for hormone testing, or assessments. And they're investing the money, but then it's getting them to adhere to a protocol. You're like, oh, you can't, you can't you can't want it for somebody more than they want it for themselves. Is there anything that you look at, or is there anything that you can say to somebody that's listening that's like, here's how you know that you're ready for this, versus somebody who wants to be ready, like you just talked about, that rebel mind, but really just that part of their mind is really loud right now. Maybe they're going to convince themselves they can't stick to something that's so structured. How does somebody know this? Or how do you know that somebody can or are not in the place to be able to get there?
That's a great question. I want to start off by saying, with all due respect, but it sounds so mean, but can I say that, Melissa?
Absolutely.
Is that okay?
Absolutely.
So, with all due respect, so the thing about helping clients and giving them a plan to follow, and then noticing that they're not adhering to it, is that if it's a plan that's not exquisitely tailored to address someone's food addiction, and they have food addiction on board, it was doomed before they even started, right? Their level of readiness is not even accurately being put to the test there, because it takes a certain kind of plan to help someone who's got that kind of condition be successful, right? It's like someone's got a bacterial infection and you're not giving them an antibiotic, right? And it's like their willingness to recover is not actually the thing, right? It's like, well, that was the wrong treatment for that condition, right? So what I would say is, there's no way to know whether someone's ready or willing or not, surrendered or not. Those are very mysterious states of being that are way above my pay grade. I would say get someone into the Bright Line Eating Boot Camp and maybe have a good talk with them. Or if you're listening, here's your good talk. Resolve to the best of your ability today to just follow the friggin' plan one day at a time. And you don't have to be on board with following a structured plan like this forever. That's irrelevant. There is no forever, right? Resolve to just follow the boot camp as it's laid out for today. It's a 10-week program, right? Give it your honest best shot. And then you will find out. You will find out, because the brain you've got today is hijacked by addictive foods. And you're going to be terrified by the thought of not eating sugar and flour. And that's natural. And it's going to feel way too restrictive and like ludicrous to even consider doing this. And the reality is that almost 90% of people after doing the boot camp say that their peace and serenity with food has gone up, not down. You think that by weighing and measuring your food and not eating sugar and flour, your peace and serenity is going to go down, because now you'll just be crazy and obsessed and restricted. But that's not what happens. In like almost 90% of cases, their peace and serenity with food goes up. And so you can't even assess your readiness or your willingness to do it until you've tried it. So just try it for a while and then you'll see.
Yeah. Sold. So I would like to, ask you where people can find out more information about this. But before you go into that, can you just give a real quick highlight of what I know right now? I have all of my listeners that are listening at this moment on the edge of their seat. I know a lot of them need this. Can you, in a real quick way, why we still have you here, just explained how this 10 weeks goes. Is there a real quick outline that you can give or
Yeah.
an idea of what it's like?
Yeah, sure. So I will say you start out at the beginning and it's a lot of work right up front, because you've got to learn kind of the whole system before you can start it properly. And so there's a planning and preparation process that takes about 5 hours to get through. It's a series of online video modules. You watch the videos, they're short chunks, and you've got time to do it, right? It's not like you have to do it in one day, but it's a good 5 hours of material to get through. And you got to do stuff in between, right? Like you got to take your before pictures, you got to clean out your kitchen, you got to do stuff like that, right? And then after that, it's one module of videos a week. And they're between an hour and a half and 2.5 hours long if you binge watch all the videos in one fell swoop. But the videos are like 3 to 15 minutes long each. So you could, listen or watch. There's an app, so you can listen there, or you can watch, online if you want or whatever, on your phone, on your computer, on your desktop, on your tablet, however you want to consume it. And yeah, and then there's also coaching calls. Those are group calls with my trained Bright Line Eating coaches. And so if you've got a specific condition, let's say you had gastric bypass surgery and you're like, look, I can't eat 3 meals. We've got a food plan for you. We know if you've had gastric bypass surgery, we have a special food plan for you. But or let's say you're going to your sister's wedding in week 2 and you need guidance on navigating that particular day. You're like, they're not even sitting down to dinner until 9 p.m. after the ceremony. Like, what do I do here? So we got you covered. You can hop on a coaching call. And yeah, and then we'll help to teach you how to find a buddy, how to find a mastermind group. These are like support structures. There'll be an online support community. There's actually 2 of them. There's one in Facebook, and then there's one in our proprietary system that is similar to Facebook. It's like posting and then commenting and replying and stuff. But it's for people who don't want to be in Facebook, right? And there are those people. So you don't need a Facebook account to participate. Yeah, and there's like exquisite support. There's some incredible bonuses. One of them is the rescue relapse system. So you don't have to be perfect. We teach you what happens if you fall off track. No problem. It's not the end of the program for you. It's just you go right over to that bonus module and follow the steps, and we teach you right how to get back on track. And there's also a bonus called the Breakthrough Your Resistance Roadmap. And if you've got resistance to even starting, you could sign up for the boot camp and start there. We release that right at the beginning with the planning and preparation process. So you can go to the Breakthrough Your Resistance Roadmap and start to learn about the part of you that's got resistance to it. Like, I don't even want to start this, either because I've tried and failed at so many things before, I can't even face another attempt. And just saying, there's a 14-day money back guarantee period. So you can do that. And if you can't break through your resistance, just get your money back. Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's a little bit about how it goes.
It's amazing. It sounds like community is a big part of it.
It's a very big part of it. It's a very big part of it. And, I know that the introverts will say, I don't want that. I don't need that. But there's the introvert's way to doing it, right? Like, you don't need a big group, but you will do better if you have a buddy through the program, right? So yeah.
And it's something that you don't have like start and stop dates. If somebody goes through it, like say they wanted to start it tomorrow versus you start a big group January 2nd. It's whenever somebody's ready.
No. So, well, we're working on what you're talking about is like evergreen. Like, could someone come in anytime? We're working on that for 2024. Right now, we're recording this in December of 2023. We have a big cohort starting right around January 1st. So I believe registration is going to be open a day or so before that and open for a couple days after that. But right around January 1st, we've got a big cohort starting. And then in the new year, just go to brightlineeating.com. And we're working on a masterclass that really explains in ways we have not gotten into in the exactly how your brain is hijacked and exactly what hasn't worked, why you haven't been able to stick with all those other programs, and exactly what makes Bright Line Eating different. And so watch that masterclass. And if we've got the boot camp available for you on a come in anytime basis, it'll say so after the masterclass. So
Gotcha. And I was, like I mentioned to you guys, and I was telling Dr. Susan before that I was curling my hair and putting on a little bit of makeup for a flight that I have to get on. And every day when I walk, I have gotten in the habit of listening to comedians, and I know that's good. That's good for my brain, my oxytocin, but I really appreciate, and I want to encourage you guys to follow the Bright Line Eating on Instagram. And I'm sure sure it's on YouTube as well. If you're not on Instagram, maybe even on Facebook, all the different avenues, I'll have her share
all the places,
but she does weekly blogs, and they range in time frame, just like any podcast. And I don't know if you know that you do this, or if you do this intentionally, Dr. Susan, but right after you introduce it, you take a nice, slow, deep breath before you start talking. And that instantly puts me, if I'm kind of half-ass, busy or listening or, distracted, it's that deep breath that you give that catches my attention, and I focus in on what you're saying. And in the few that I have listened to, I have learned a lot. So I want to encourage the listeners to definitely follow that, and to start listening to those on your walks, when you're getting ready, in the shower. They're very, very, very powerful. And I think they're also very genius from a business standpoint, but very powerful as well. So can you share with the audience where they can find you and get closer to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So those video blogs, so I call them vlogs because, video blogs are available all kinds of places. So on Instagram, like Melissa just said, and also on Facebook, and also on YouTube, and also on the Bright Line Eating website, brightlineeating.com. And on the Bright Line Eating website, there's a search box if you go to the vlog page, if you're just curious, like, what does Dr. Susan say about cross addiction, or about Thanksgiving, or about, Halloween, or about whatever, right? I've shot hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of vlogs now. I've been doing it every week without exception for a long time. So, and then I would say just brightlineeating.com. Just go check out brightlineeating.com. And there's so many resources there, including all of our published studies. We publish our results. They are remarkable. You can get from Bright Line Eating what you can get from Ozempic or Wegovy, but without the side effects and the ridiculous cost. So yeah, check it out.
Well, you are doing beyond good work, and I'm very grateful to have gotten connected with you. And I wish there were more of you out there. You can just feel now that I know, because you've been there, the empathy that you have for those 2/3 of people that do deal with addiction, no matter severe or not so severe, and being able to help people through that is amazing work. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Melissa. It's been really delightful talking to you, and I can't wait to get to know some of your listeners if they come on into the boot camp. It'll be
you're not
get to know them.
You're not rid of me yet either, so you might see me.
But that would be so sweet. Let me know if you decide to do that.
I will. Definitely will. Definitely will. But I always have a closing statement that I always say, Dr. Susan, and I think it really relates to today, that I hope you wake up feeling prepared and you go to bed feeling proud. So thank you so much for this interview. It's meant a lot to me, because I've learned a lot personally, and I know that it's going to help a lot of people, and we will stay in contact. Wow, we've reached the end. But before I leave you, I'd love to hear from you. After all, it's not every day that someone reaches out and asks for your opinion. And to me, your opinion does matter. So please share this episode with anyone that you think needs to hear this message. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. My name is Melissa McAllister. And until next time, thank you for being your own health advocate.